Thank you very much. Mr. Gloom and Doom's up here again. Mostly I do deal with the financial part of what we're doing out there. I put out a legislative report, by the way, and also an announcement that I was running again. What I didn't put in there is I don't know why, but I'd be happy, Jill, to share some of these with you if at some point you want to mail them out. I would have, by the way, given the legislature a D this time instead of the C that I did if it had not been for fixing the state capitol and passing pension reform. I think those are probably the two most financial things we did. As far as the state capitol, I would have much preferred using rainy day funds so that we wouldn't have had all the expenses incurred with bonding, but you know, that's just me, and it came down to what it came down to, and like John and others, I supported the bonds, which I'm not a big bond person, of course. I don't know where you want to start. You want to talk about incentives, you want to talk about exemptions, you want to talk about tax credits, or you want to talk about how crappy the general appropriations were this year. And I mean, believe me, it is a sand dune. It's getting ready to come down, and it's probably going to come down in John's tenure out there, maybe not mine, but in John's. That was absolutely the worst piece of legislation that I have ever had the experience or to be able to vote against. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it's, you know, it's just smoke and mirrors is all it is. I sat with some people the other day, a state agency, that we took $22 million from their revolving funds. And I said, of course you're going to have $22 million for us again next year. And they looked at me and shook their head and said, you got to be kidding. You guys are sucking the blood out of our agencies. And that's exactly what we've done. We took, you talk about the tornado. Last year out of the rainy day fund, we appropriated $40 million to help the tornado victims. And we didn't use but 15 million of it. Was it 40 or 45? 40, wasn't it? 45? We didn't use but 20 million of it. So they took the money and they put it in the emergency fund, and we used it in the state budget this year, in the general appropriations. It's not going to be there next year, but it was used this year. I asked them, I said, how come that isn't still rainy day money? And they said, well, once you take it out, it no longer is. And I said, well, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And that's rainy day money, regardless of what we want to say it was. But, you know, I could go into the tax credit deals. I want to tell you, we gave you a new one this year. Think about what we do. Do you know that over 60% of all the babies that are born in this state are paid for by you, by Medicaid, to the tune of $169 million. So what we do, we not only deliver their babies for them, but we have prenatal care, we deliver their babies, we have women, infants, and children, we have daycare, we have preschool lunches, we have free health care for them, on it goes. Get on up into a higher deal, we have an earned income tax credit, we have food stamps, and guess what we did? We passed a bill this year for affordable housing. Now on the surface, a tax credit, on the surface that, by the way, is going to amount to $40 million in 2026 annually. Now let's think about that for a minute. What we did. There is a federal affordable housing tax credit for people who build those, and that's accessible here in Oklahoma. And then we have rent subsidies that people get to live in those very homes. But that wasn't good enough for us. We had to pass our own affordable housing tax credit. And I assume next year that the real estate people will come to us and say, look, you got these cheap houses, we can't afford to get enough commission out of them to sell them, so we're going to have a tax credit, and that's the next direction I would assume that we would take. You know, what we're doing out there is shameful. It's absolutely shameful. Last year, the last day of the session, and I think I mentioned this earlier, we extended the wind tax credit that my people in District 85 are paying $6.166 million to Roger Mills County for one of their incentives. Roger Mills, with a population of 3,600 people, we're paying over $6 million annually because of wind farms being out there. And that doesn't include their wind taxes themselves. That's just on the ad valorem taxes. So you're paying for your own property and for the property out in Roger Mills County and for property in El Reno and Canadian County. We're paying for all of these. Right now, this last year was $32 million. We have overtaken with wind all the other ad valorem tax incentives, all the other abatements. So that by 2018, we're going to be paying in ad valorem reimbursements $90 million out of the State General Revenue Fund. And the wind industry, with their zero emission tax credit, and with just with these two, and they get 4 total. With these two, with the zero emission and the property tax abatement, between now and 2018, and they couldn't extend it out any further than that because we extended it to 2021, and then it'll go on to 2031 because we give them 10 years to collect all these. But anyway, it's going to cost the state treasury, just in those two, doesn't include the sales tax exemption, doesn't include the investment tax credit, just in those two, $290 million in 4 years out of the General Revenue Fund. Now, you can't keep doing this, folks, and fund the things like Jason's talking about that you have to fund. We've got people who are in need in this state. We've got a waiting list at DHS of 7,000 people. Some of them have, I use the word mentally retarded. That used to be acceptable. It's not, but that's what it is. It's developmentally disabled now. We've got hundreds and hundreds of them that need wheelchairs because they can't sit in a regular high chair in that condition, and we can't afford to give it to them. But we're passing out all of this other money to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. One of my greatest accomplishments was getting rid of 3 of the venture capital taxes when I was chairman of the Revenue and Taxation Committee. 3 of those that were costing the state well over $200 million each and every year, and some of the banks, I can't hear that bell. And some of the banks were using them as part of their lending. Look, I'll answer any questions. I'll furnish these. I'd be happy to come back and give you a 16-minute speech at some point. I thank you for your time, your attention. I, by the way, am a member of this group, and I'm proud of that. And I thank you very much.